The idea was to help the Department of Defense understand that your systems are vulnerable and you need to take proactive action. Well, Department of Defense said, well, that's fine, NSA, but that's not your job. We want to use modern computer systems, Microsoft specifically, because they are much more efficient systems, and certainly they have built in the appropriate security, so we don't really need to worry about it. At the time, I was general counsel at the National Security Agency, which has two missions. One is to monitor the adversary's communications, military communications, and the other is to prevent them from monitoring your communications. And back in the early to mid-90s, it was all associated with radio communications, telephone. Computers was not part of the equation, not until the mid-90s. So you had the Department of Defense realizing that there were a number of adversaries, in particular two at that time, what is then known affectionately as the Soviet Union, and also the People's Republic of China, PRC. And between the two, it was the Russians that were a lot more sophisticated and a lot more successful. But those were not the only two adversaries you had to worry about. You had to worry about Brazil, very aggressive acting program. Later, you had to worry about North Korea. That was in the much later time frame, but still they were trying to learn. The general mindset back in the mid-90s was that cybersecurity is a cost center. It doesn't produce anything. It's a liability. And when I would brief CEOs in the boards of directors, I would get the reaction that cybersecurity is kind of like physical security. It's guns, gates, and guards. It doesn't produce income. It's just an expense center. You only need it when there's a problem. So then the struggle was helping to educate the Department of Defense that your systems are vulnerable and subject to attack. Here we had to be very careful on a couple of things. Number one, part of our responsibility was to test classified communication systems with DoD. But we always did that openly. We always let them know, hey, we're coming in to test your system. We would like you to know about it, consistent with the Electronic Communications Privacy Act, and along with National Security Directive 42, which was classified at the time. It's not classified now. We had to get the owner's permission to go in and look at their system for security deficiencies. That was my role as the general counsel, to make sure those legal requirements were satisfied. Because otherwise, then you have our guys and gals committing a felony. A felony in the United States is worth at least 1 year in jail, which is not conducive to a positive career path. So I was very concerned about the technicians that I was working with, the computer security testers. A, were they telling me the truth, or were they telling me just what I wanted to hear, or what they thought I needed to hear, so they could get a written legal authorization to do their job? Now, having been a former defense counsel, I know that there is a tendency for clients to tell you what they think you want to hear so they can get a yes. Whenever you ask your parents' permission, you don't always tell them, I'm going to spend the night with my boyfriend. I'm going to go to a party with a bunch of my girlfriends. So I said, if you guys and gals are going to be doing this, I want to be trained to do your job. And they said, that's unheard of. And I said, no, I need to understand what you're doing. So I went to hacker school. I became a hacker. Only good in the laboratory. I didn't trust myself to do it live, but I learned enough about hacking to know how to break into a government computer in the laboratory. Now, I tell you that for two reasons. One, because I was trying to protect my clients. And number two, if I could learn it, can you imagine who else could learn it? I mean, I flunked physics in college, okay? So I graduated from hacker school, and I sat down and started working with this group. And the chief legal officer, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, was a personal friend of mine. And he came to me and he said, Rich, we're very concerned about the security of the DoD systems. And I know that's a concern of yours as well. So then there was a lot of discussion with Microsoft, helping them to understand the gravity of the situation, which they did. And they asked NSA to help them make sure their operating systems specifically Windows 95, was secure. And so under a commercial agreement, we evaluated their system, pointed out more of the major deficiencies and how to correct them, which they subsequently did. Then if you go back and look at the shrink wrap disclaimer on the back of a package of Windows 95, the language was very carefully crafted saying this Windows operating system is secure to use in a closed system, meaning if you're not connected to the internet, it's safe. Well, hell, if you don't go in the water, you don't get wet.